it has to be consumer focused first. So my big hope is that we have a bit more reliance on declared data. By what I mean is, you know, login data, whether that's a subscription or just a login to a website. If we can get our act in gear and line up those logins more, whether that's multiple publishers coming together to share that data, you know, for example, like the Ozone approach, or whether that's actually leaning into the Facebooks, Amazons, and leaning on the infrastructure they've got in some kind of passport mechanism, I don't know. But what that would mean is the consumer is understanding that they have given over information about themselves, and that's what's, you know, is all unifying it under one identifier. The second thing I really would like to see is a bit of a rebalance. I think with what we've done with programmatic is we got a little bit carried away on what we could do, and we talked a lot about one-to-one and pieces like that, which just really aren't what we should be aiming for, even if we could do it, and we can't. So I think the honesty about what our capabilities are and a readjustment back to value quality. So one of the things we've seen is we almost went into the long tail of publishers because we could get lots of reach and performance, maybe metrics, and maybe that was not real performance. It was more to do with this last click or kind of last impression that we were measuring. What we found is that we know when consumers are on a site for longer, when they're engaged in an article, when they do things like hover over the advert even, it's an indicator for us that we see better brand uplift and we see better engagement. And we know that happens on the quality websites that have invested in their content. So I think we need to go back to understanding what quality media looks like, as well as getting excited about what targeting we can do on that side of things. So if we can balance that kind of need to work across lots of environments. The final thing I guess I would ask for as an agency is we have too many tech and tools. So it's been amazing seeing the programmatic landscape come under control and the levers that we can pull and what has impact. But the challenge to me is right now, if I want to plan a campaign, I have to go in and out of so many different ecosystems to gather the data for me to understand what's going to have impact and what doesn't. So I think as we move forward on here, one of the biggest challenges to the publisher community is unless you give us easier ways to plan in your environment, it is much harder, in all honesty, to work in the publisher environment than it is in maybe a Facebook or an Amazon, somewhere like that. So how do we build in some of this ease of understanding, this data democratization, where we can really look in one place, as opposed to all of the building separate tools where we then are, you know, stuck in this jigsaw trying to put it all together. It's a utopia.
Sure, we can arrange that.
Excellent.
I think I will say it's a fair point, and Ben, presumably that is one that you're aware of when you speak to your agency partners about how it can be complicated working amongst different publishers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of bringing together all of these different data sets to create a segment which is large enough to be able to target, but then to understand that the composition of those segments across all of the different publishers that you may have collated the data sets from is entirely different. We're absolutely aware of the headache that poses today, and it creates huge inefficiency. So the standardization of data and the ability to target uniformly in terms of data composition at scale is I think is a really important building block for the future of the media targeting landscape we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And Dean, as well then, for you, what about your ideal world look like in terms of how you're going to continue reaching your audiences in the future when third-party cookies are not available? What are you hoping for?
I think a lot of it is reiterating some of the things that Ben and especially Alexis have said here. When Alexis was talking about how fragmented everything is, to sort of give a use case of that from what I've experienced at William Hill, you're trying to explain the value of why you want to invest in programmatic as a channel. And if you're comparing, we've talked about walled gardens here, Facebook, Google, it's so much easier to convey and quickly convey the value of what those channels will bring versus programmatic, which it's so interesting. There's so many moving parts and everybody wants to be a part of it, but the end value and how you present that value back to somebody internally, to a CMO and whatnot, is much more difficult to convey. So what I would like to see is us use the fact that the cookie's dying as an opportunity to simplify everything, from both the publisher side, as Ben's spoken about, to consultancy, to every single part of it. The fact that we don't have a solution potentially right now that will tick our boxes isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We can work towards that, and it should help us work towards simplifying everything and actually be able to grow the value of sort of display advertising in the channel and programmatic. So that's kind of what I would like to see. That's my utopic view. Let's use this as an opportunity to actually find a solution that suits everybody and find a more simplified way and make it less fragmented.
Mm.